we're not talking about your dish sponge. There are different types of sponges that create unique textures that are really going to help level up your FX looks. Texture is what's going to make it look more organic and complex. Whether you're doing bruising, blending a prosthetic into a skin tone, or even creating a crazy color character. Let's start off with the most familiar. Makeup sponges. They come in both latex and latex-free. And using the technique of tearing texture into the sides can give you a great realistic look for things like bruising and skin breakup. These are probably most popular because they're cheap and super easy to find. They work great with cream, water-activated, and alcohol-activated makeups, and completely customizable just depending on how you tear it. There are a ton of variations you can get, whether you're going lighter for a more subtle effect, or just going in there and really building it up. Now, there's not a ton of surface area, so doing a larger area of the body, these probably aren't the most optimal. You can find uncut blocks of these that would give you a lot more area to cover. So if this is a technique you're determined to utilize in something like body paint, that might be something to look into. This is the one on the list that is the best for covering the most surface area. They come in a ton of different sizes, so if you need a texture fast over a large area, these are perfect. They can also be found super small, but you can tear one down and get the perfect size for your needs. They are natural, so they're all unique, giving you so many different textures, whether you're swapping sponges or even just using different sides of the same sponge. These are great with water-activated makeup. They will last you years with proper care. But you should know they're not great for alcohol colors. The alcohol will begin to damage and break down that sponge. Cream-based, probably not the best to use with these sponges, since they really should be wet so they're more pliable, and the wet surface probably isn't gonna grab that oil-based makeup as well as, say, the water-based. Plus, cleaning these might be a complete nightmare. Depending on how wet your mixture is, that is going to change the definition on the texture it leaves behind. But that is really true for all of these sponges. Use 3 different sides on one sponge so you could see how unique they all are. Now, these aren't really a sponge. They are latex-free, and you can find them in different densities, from a fine texture to a more coarse style. You can cut and trim them to your needs, and they work with all makeups, though it doesn't pick up much color. Not one I would want to grab if I need to cover a large area. These are great for more subtle texture. Think more like a speckle pattern or a beard stubble or capillary breakup. This can be used with all 3 types of makeup, but you definitely want to make sure your mixture is not too wet. Since these are not an absorbent type of sponge, it will be harder to pick up any color, and you won't get much texture. The coarser ones have larger gaps, meaning less surface is going to be making contact with the skin. As you stipple, you can kind of see you get a slightly different effect depending on the density. These are also awesome for scrapes and scratches. Orange sponges do work with all makeups, sort of. Now, I do like to use these with alcohol colors, but over time, you might find that it will begin to dry rot and crumble. This breakdown is a lot slower with the alcohol than the sea sponge. It took me about a year or so for my trusty orange sponge to finally just give up and crumble. Now, if you're going through Amazon, they definitely price gouge these puppies. So I highly recommend going through a makeup supplier instead. They are easy to trim, and you can round them up and make kind of a bullet shape like this. That's so you don't have any sharp lines when stippling texture. These are also great in small little pieces for stippling adhesive, Bondo or latex when you want to add texture to the edge of a prosthetic. I absolutely love the texture these sponges bring. It's very organic. Since it's not absorbent, with water and alcohol activated makeups, just make sure your mixture is not too wet. The drier your mixture, the more control you're gonna have, and the more subtle and fine textures you'll be able to create. The red cosmetic sponge, this is a rubber-based sponge. Easy to trim into shapes, and the texture is super fine, so it's gonna be really subtle. I usually use these more for applying texture into wax, or give a softer texture when stippling latex or acrylic adhesive to blend in prosthetic edges. I don't tend to use these much for a painted effect. I do imagine that the alcohol would break these down eventually, maybe quicker than how they break down the orange sponges, but I don't use them this way, so I can't really speak on that. I found using these with water activated is not so great. It's easy to smudge the texture, and it may take a little practice using it this way. but with creams, it works awesome. It's much easier to use, and as you can see, it gives you a really nice subtle texture. Now, when using cream makeups with any of these sponges, if your cream makeup is too dry or too hard, you're gonna find that it's hard to get that texture effect. But there's a super easy, cheap fix to revive your cream makeups. So be sure to click the next video and find out how.